It started like any other day for Jacob Matthews. The alarm went off at 4 a.m., pulling him out of a restless sleep. He rubbed his eyes and sat on the edge of the bed, his mind already racing through the hours ahead. Being a firefighter wasn't just a job for Jacob, it was his life. For 18 years, he'd served his community with courage and dedication, running into situations most people would flee from. But as he laced up his boots that morning, Jacob couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. Something felt different. His wife, Sarah, was already in the kitchen, making his usual cup of black coffee. She greeted him with a tired smile, but her eyes lingered on him longer than usual. "Be careful today," she said softly, her voice laced with worry. Jacob nodded, brushing off her concern like he always did. "I will, I promise," he replied, planting a kiss on her forehead before heading out the door. He didn't realize those would be the last words he'd say to her before everything changed. The fire call came in just after dawn. A wildfire had broken out in the California hills, and it was spreading faster than anyone could comprehend. The winds were fierce, whipping flames across dry grasslands and into residential areas. Within minutes, Jacob and his crew were geared up and racing toward the inferno. The air was thick with tension, the kind that only comes when lives hang in the balance. As they arrived on the scene, chaos greeted them. Families were fleeing their homes, clutching pets and hastily packed bags. The cries of children mixed with the roar of the flames, and Jacob's heart clenched at the sight. He'd seen wildfires before, but this one was different. It felt alive, as if the fire had a mind of its own. "All right, team," Jacob said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "We've got to move fast. Lives are on the line." The crew sprang into action, each firefighter working with precision and determination. Jacob's job was to head deeper into the forest, where reports of trapped residents had come in. The smoke was so thick it was hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Every breath burned his lungs, but he pushed forward, driven by the thought of someone out there needing his help. Deep in the forest, Jacob found a small cabin engulfed in flames. Through the shattered window, he could see a young boy huddled in a corner, his face streaked with soot and tears. Without hesitation, Jacob smashed through the door, the heat hitting him like a wave. "Hey, buddy, I'm here to get you out," he called, his voice hoarse from the smoke. The boy didn't respond, paralyzed with fear. Jacob scooped him up, shielding him as best he could from the flames, and made a break for the door. Outside, he handed the boy off to another firefighter, relief flooding him as he saw the child carried to safety. But just as Jacob turned back to the cabin, something went horribly wrong. A sudden gust of wind sent flames roaring toward him, cutting off his escape route. The fire surrounded him in an instant, and the heat was unbearable. He tried to call for help, but the radio crackled and went silent. He was alone. In that moment, as the fire closed in, Jacob knew he wasn't going to make it. His thoughts turned to his wife, Sarah, and their two little girls. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "God, if you're there, please help me. Don't let me die like this." And then, everything went dark. When Jacob opened his eyes, he wasn't in the forest anymore. He wasn't even on Earth. He was standing in a place so breathtakingly beautiful it felt like a dream. The air was crisp and pure, the colors more vibrant than anything he'd ever seen. There was a peace here, a stillness that filled him with awe. Before him stood a figure cloaked in radiant light. Though Jacob couldn't see his face clearly, he knew immediately who it was. "Jacob," the figure said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "I am Jesus." Jacob fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the presence before him. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "Lord, I don't deserve to be here. I've made so many mistakes, I've failed you." But Jesus knelt down, lifting Jacob to his feet. His eyes were filled with love, pure, unconditional love. "Your mistakes have been covered by my grace," he said gently, "but there is something I must show you." Suddenly the scene changed. Jacob was no longer in the peaceful realm. Instead, he found himself overlooking the earth, and his heart broke at what he saw. The world was burning, not just with physical flames, but with corruption, greed, and sin. Darkness covered the land like a thick cloud. Jesus pointed toward California, where the wildfires raged. "Jacob, these fires are not just natural," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "They are a reflection of the spiritual battle that is taking place." Hollywood, California. These places have become strongholds of darkness. The enemy has used them to spread deception, to blind people to the truth. Images began to flash before Jacob's eyes. He saw the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but beneath the surface was a world of brokenness and despair. He saw lives destroyed by fame, families torn apart by greed, and children exploited in unimaginable ways. The pain was overwhelming, and Jacob's heart ached for the people trapped in this darkness. "Lord," Jacob said, his voice trembling, "what can I do? I'm just one man." Jesus turned to him, his face filled with compassion and urgency. "Go back, Jacob. Tell them what you have seen. Warn them that time is short. My return is near, and they must choose light or darkness, life or death." In an instant, Jacob was pulled back into his body. He woke up in a hospital bed, gasping for air. Doctors and nurses rushed to his side, their faces filled with shock and relief. They had pronounced him dead at the scene, yet here he was, alive. Jacob's family was by his side, tears streaming down their faces as they held his hands. His wife Sarah whispered, "You're a miracle." But Jacob knew it wasn't just his survival that was miraculous. It was the message he had been given. As soon as he was able, he began to share his story with everyone who would listen. He told them about the fire, about the moment he cried out to God, and about the incredible encounter with Jesus. He described the vision he'd been shown, the heartbreaking truth about the spiritual battle raging on earth. People wept as they listened. Many were convicted by the urgency of his message. Jacob warned them about the dangers of chasing materialism and fame, about the deception that had taken root in places like Hollywood. But more than that, he pleaded with them to turn to Christ, to seek the light before it was too late. So now I want to ask you something. If today was your last day on earth, where would you spend eternity? If you were in Jacob's shoes, surrounded by flames with no escape, would you be ready to meet Jesus? Or would you realize too late that you had spent your life chasing things that don't matter? This isn't just Jacob's story. It's a wake-up call for all of us. Life is fragile. Time is short. None of us knows when our last day will come. But here's the good news. Jesus is waiting for you with open arms. No matter what mistakes you've made, no matter how far you've strayed, His grace is enough. All you have to do is turn to Him. If this story has touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and let us know your thoughts. And if you've had a near-death experience of your own, we'd love to hear your story. And finally, if you haven't already, make the decision today to follow Jesus. Surrender your life to Him. Don't wait for tomorrow, because tomorrow isn't promised. Eternity is closer than you think. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories that remind us of what truly matters. God bless you.